The Office of Sustainability presents a series on personal sustainability. In this series, we will be speaking with academics and professionals to explore what this concept means, what barriers exist in our culture, and how our own personal well-being can influence our communities. Originally from Wyoming, Dr. Wright discovered her passion for ethics and morality from an old copy of Plato's Apology at a garage sale. After receiving her master's in philosophy and psychology, and then her PhD in psychology, she became a professor at the College of Charleston. Her research focuses on virtue and humility. In this episode, Dr. Wright explains the relationship between personal sustainability, which she refers to as flourishing, and one's ability to be ethical.
So I was at a garage sale with my mom. I was about 13, and we came across the copy of Plato's Apology, which is a book about Socrates and his trial in Athens. And he was trying to encourage people to think carefully about morality and justice and doing the right thing. And so that really started the root of my research and the sort of stuff that I do, and why I studied psychology and why I studied philosophy. I haven't answered really any of the questions that kind of arose for me that day, but I do think that there's a really important relationship between ethics and self-care, because I think that there's a relationship between ethics and flourishing. I don't think that it's possible for anyone to be a genuinely virtuous being and not be flourishing. The ability to develop, let's just say for example, compassion. The ability to develop genuine compassion requires, it's something that takes root and it spreads. So it's not just like I'm compassionate towards you, I'm also in mirror image necessarily compassionate towards myself, because at some level, and this is something that came out of the humility stuff that I did, at some level the fact that I'm me as opposed to you, it's just this arbitrary fact that I'm in this life as opposed to any life, and I have a responsibility to care for this life just as I have a responsibility to care for all the lives around me. So to the extent that I'm compassionate towards anyone, I have to be compassionate towards everyone, and that includes, very importantly, myself. We would be foolish to think that you can just bring, so for example, really mentally ill people off the street, so that you like with some of the stuff that happened with We Are Family this summer with the center, and you have people who are profoundly disturbed and they're getting into fights and they're causing discord. You can't just expect that you bring these people in and say, okay, here's a shower, here's some clothes, here's some food, you'll be fine. Not going to work that way. There's a tremendous amount, oh my God, there's so much trauma, there's so much pain, there's so much suspicion. Because like, who are you, and what is all this stuff, and why should I trust that you are doing this out of the goodness of your heart, and I'm going to start stealing stuff because the next thing I know this could go away, this goodness could go away, and I don't have the self-regulatory skills to prevent myself from fighting with someone over the last cookie because I'm out in the street fighting for cookies all the time. It's like, so of course that's going to happen. So we have to create the space where that's being controlled as much as possible, with as little negative stimuli as possible, with as much kindness and compassion as possible, but it's being contained, it's being constrained, while we slowly move this individual to a place where they're going to be, maybe it's getting them on medication, maybe it's getting therapy, maybe it's just slowly getting them out of hypervigilance, where they're just in threat mode all the time. And that can take time, but then my guess is that most of the time, over time, people would get to the point where that's not no longer necessary. You may have individuals that again are too far gone, and then you're providing the most compassionate and most respectful environment that's possible, given the barriers that you're working with. The other thing that we have to be doing is we have to be creating an environment that is compassionate, respectful to all. And it's like, and you can look at those individuals and say, let me be really clear about how your accumulation of wealth over your lifetime over multiple lifetimes that you have inherited, and you've been a part of a chain of abuses that have occurred that have allowed you to have this inheritance. Maybe you're just someone who's really smart who came up with this idea and you've made $1 billion from nothing overnight. That's all of these things are possible. Let's talk a little bit about what the damage is of you accumulating that wealth and keeping it for yourself as opposed to having it be more distributed. And let's talk more about the system that allowed you to create that wealth and what that system is doing to the rest of the world. That's not allowed. And you can say that lovingly. It's not like we have to be punitive and assholes and all these other things about it and say you're evil and you've done all these terrible things, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. It's just like we'd go into the playground and say, you know what, kiddo, you don't get to throw sand at every kid who comes to play in the sandbox just because you want it to be your sandbox. You don't get to do that, because in fact what I want you to understand as a 3-year-old is what it means to love, to have a loving environment where everyone is respected and treated equally and given their dignity, and you are going to learn that. Now I can tell you that, and hopefully it'll be like taken in, and then you'll start automatically playing with the kids. But if that doesn't happen, then we're going to have some consequences, where maybe the playground, maybe the sandbox is somewhere where you don't get to play for a while, and maybe there's other things that have to happen until you get it through your head that part of being a human being on this planet means that you have to express compassion and respect towards others who have as much dignity as you do, and we will likewise express compassion and respect for your dignity. But that's going to have to be something that you somehow absorb. And that does require there to be structure that is put in place to help to ensure that, because obviously it's not like we're all suddenly going to magically get better and do it automatically on ourselves.
No.
And that's one of the conundrums that we're in, is who's gonna move us in that direction, and how? How many healthy people do we have on this planet? I'd love to see a show of hands. They're probably as few as the 1%, really. Right? I mean, it's just like the study I think I was telling you about, where in developmental, where this woman was really interested in studying all of the risk factors associated with poverty. And she's like, well, okay, I need a good contrast case, so let me go in there and I'll go to an affluent school and I'll be able to look at how well these kids are doing, and that'll be a good contrast to, like, why are these kids not doing well when these kids are doing well? And then she goes into these schools and she's like, oh my God, these kids aren't doing any better. As a matter of fact, in some ways they're doing worse, because at least these kids have each other's backs. These kids are in the middle of a vicious competition for first place, right? So there's something nasty going on here. So she ended up shifting her research focus to looking at what's going on with rich kids that are coming from affluent neighborhoods. They are just as likely to experience depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, and drug addiction, and alcoholism, and all those things, crime. It just gets swept under the rug. They get sent off to rehabs. The pregnancies get aborted, all that stuff. So it's more hidden, but it is so incredibly there. So tell me what's wrong with this picture. So I think that the first way that it relates is very directly, which is that you can't have a dirty home and ask other people to clean up theirs. You can't. And so I think that one of the biggest problems with our whole field of activism is we have a lot of unhealthy people who are out there in the world screaming for change. And I don't think it's going to work very well. I think one of the most important things that anyone can do if they're an activist is they've got to get healthy, right? And that's regardless, it's like the put your own mask on before you put that whole thing. It's like you can't even know what it is really that you're arguing for. You can't know what a health, it's like, so let's say you're out there going, it should change, it should change, it should change. And all of a sudden God comes over and you goes, okay, what do you want it to look like? You'd be like, oh shit, I don't know. Right? Because none of us know what a healthy world will look like, because we're not healthy. So if we are going to create a healthy world, if we're going to fight for a healthy world, then we have got to get healthy. We have got to do our shadow work. We've got to work through our pain. We have got to understand our trauma. We have got to get into that balanced state. We've got to find our center, maybe find our barometer, however you want to put it, but we have to be there, because then we can be advocates for change. And if God came over and said, all right, fine, shit, would you just stop yelling? What is it that you want it to look like? We want it to look like this. And I actually think that in the process of doing that, in the process of becoming healthier, we're already a good chunk of the way there, right? Because the process of becoming healthier allows us to have healthier interactions with the people that we're fighting against. It allows us to have healthier interactions with everyone else in our life. And as you become healthier, you're having an influence on other people. Other people are like, whoa, what's up with you? Like, what's going on with you? And someone's getting ready to be defensive and you say, I can see you're having a hard day and I just want to let you know I really value you. And then they like respond to that. Or you're able to say, guess what, guys, here's a line. You don't get to cross it. Right? So whatever it is that we're doing, we're being healthy with our boundaries and we're being healthy with our love and respect. Then it changes the dynamics in a way that encourage healthy behavior, which then influences so it's like a cascade effect, so that by the time we get to the thing that we really wanted to fix, we're already a good portion of the way there, and the motivation to change the sort of institutional structure, it's much more present. There's much less to fight. We don't have to shove things down people's throats because they're closer to already understanding why it's necessary. And you can also speak in a way that's going to make more sense to them, because you're not so flipping angry and, I hate you because you're conservative and blah, blah, blah. It's like you're not approaching it from that perspective. You're approaching it from a place of health. So I think they're fundamentally connected.